Welcome to episode 6 of ALS Matters. Today we have a few marathon runners. We're going to chat with Jeff, Matt, and Mike about their advocacy and raising awareness for ALS. So to start off with, let's start with you, Jeff. I think you're our other resident ALSer. Could you give me like a brief kind of just share briefly your journey through getting diagnosed with ALS?
Yeah, I first noticed something going on strange, like most people that come down with ALS, in like the end of March of 2021. I was running back from the gym after a workout, and I stubbed my foot and tripped and fell on the sidewalk. And when I picked myself up and turned around to look at what I tripped over, I didn't see anything. And then I tried to run again, and I was never able to run right after that. And it took a while to get a diagnosis. I didn't know I had ALS, or I thought I was just getting old. I turned 60 and I told people my body was going to pot, and I thought it was just old age for quite a while. And then finally in like October of 2022, I started going to the doctors, but I didn't get diagnosed until December of 2023, so 14 months after I started the investigation. So I've now been living with an ALS diagnosis for about a year and a half.
And so we got diagnosed right about the same time then, because I was August of 23.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah. I know you guys just did a pretty interesting run. What's it been like preparing for those and getting the word out about ALS kind of in conjunction with that? We'll start with Jeff and we'll go around the horn.
Well, the big run started as the boys wanted to give Dad a cool family memory. And they did most of the work, but I wanted to contribute to the effort, so I asked them if they didn't mind that we shared our story, because it is a cool story of love and family in the face of adversity. And so I did the, forming the 501(c) and coordinating the fundraising. And although I have to give my son Matt a lot of credit because he does the bookkeeping and he set stuff up for me to try to make it easier. But he's the guy behind the curtain. And then my stepson, who's not on the call, but he did our website, jeffreybirkel.org. And so we got up and organized to try to raise awareness of ALS. As all of us know, it's a rare disease, and only about 50% of the people even know what the Ice Bucket Challenge was for. And so we're trying to do our small part to change that and raise awareness, and at the same time hopefully get a few funds to help with research and taking care of people.
Matt, we'll jump to you. What's it like trying to prepare for one of these things and do the advocacy and awareness around it too? I imagine that's a lot to take on.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this before. I don't think we really knew the whole journey that we were getting into when we first, Mikey and I were talking before we had talked to Dad about, first comes the diagnosis, and then you're kind of thinking about that, and that's kind of hitting you for a while. And then after you've had a chance to kind of take a deep breath, you think, okay, well, what can we do now? And so I was thinking, we all run, and it would be fun to do something with Dad. And Mikey and I, a year prior, had just run the Boston Marathon. And so I said to Mikey, wouldn't it be cool if we ran Boston pushing Dad in a wheelchair? We didn't even know anything about any of this stuff, all of the details of the how do you qualify, what are the rules. And so in the same vein, you know, what was it going to be like? Outreach, doing the fundraising, you know, setting up a company and tracking the finances so that we could get corporate matches from our donors and all of that type of stuff was a lot of learning. But you know, I think this applies to life. Take on a new challenge, or when you're faced with a new challenge, is that you're not really going to know exactly how everything's going to go, and you're just going to have to keep learning and solving those problems and overcoming those challenges along the way. So you know, like as another example of a challenge, we needed to get a special type of wheelchair to run this race, and I didn't know that at first. I thought, oh, well, what if, you know, Mikey and I just qualified as normal runners for Boston, and then we just showed up on the day with Dad in a wheelchair and we just pushed him. That wasn't going to fly. They wouldn't let that happen. They have a special category for the wheelchairs, and they only have certain types of chairs that are allowed to be used in the race. And these are special made racing wheelchairs, which are hard to come by and are not mass produced. So that's just another solid example of a challenge that we faced, but we overcame in this journey.
Mike, how about you? What was it like for you to kind of prepare for this?
Yeah, well, they hit on all the hard points. I'm going to talk a bit more on the fun stuff. My job was just to be in good enough shape to push Dad in the race, and I think I did that. But it was certainly, you know, it's a challenge. We've never pushed a wheelchair before in a marathon, not ever, honestly, for racing. And so when the push chair arrived, I live in Minneapolis and Dad lives half the time in Nebraska on our family ranch, and then half the time in Illinois because that's where we grew up as a family. And so Dad's not here. So I have this chair and I'm like setting it up. I'm like, what the heck? How am I going to train with this? Am I just going to buy like 200 pounds of sand and put it in the chair and push it around? So I asked my wife to sit in it for some training runs. And so we were pushing it around. And it's really funny as a runner, when you run a lot, you don't want to have to stop in the middle of your run. Like, you know, when you're crossing the street or whatever, you kind of expect the cars to wait for you when they're turning at the stop sign. Well, they don't always do that, right? Like people are in a rush to get home from work. When you have a bright orange wheelchair that's about 6 feet long, they definitely stop for you. And so it was kind of funny. She was like, oh, I feel bad. You're pushing me up these hills and like rolling around, but it was good. It was fun training. I had a great time. You know, I tell people pushing in the race, the number one thing that I think I liked about it was, well, number one, it was the first marathon I'd ever done with my dad, which was awesome. But then number two, he couldn't get away from me. If he wanted to slow down too bad, I was slowing down. He was in that the whole time with me and we could chat the whole way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which was really fun. Yeah, the preparation, you know, it's hard training for a marathon, and you know, Matt and Dad did a lot of the logistical preparation to make sure we could get into the race. But it was a good time. I think, you know, it from, you know, for Dad, like kind of, you know, our intention here was to do something fun as a family, but it really morphed into, you know, like a purpose and something that, you know, we could all do together for a lot longer than we anticipated, right? Like,
right.
We just kind of thought, oh, we're going to do this event together and have a fun day. But then it turned into almost a year of us, you know, talking about this race and having something together that we're still doing, even through this ALS, which I think is great. It's brought us all a lot closer together.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I was just going to say, Cory, let me add, Mike, you know, that was my 11th marathon. I ran the previous 10. But I have to say the last two were certainly the easiest and the most enjoyable. So thank you, Mike. And Matt.
So Jeff, for you, what's it like being able to share that with your sons? Something that you clearly have a love for.
It is, you know, I tell people, you know, it's kind of a trite saying, but it's so true. You know, it's a gift money can't buy. And having been a marathoner myself, I know what they were giving me. You know, it's not just the day, you know, it's the training every day. You know, they started the training in like June, right after Father's Day last year. And they pretty much trained every day up and through the marathon that we ran in Boston. So it's a tremendous commitment of time and their bodies. And wintertime, Matt's in Madison and Mike's in Minneapolis. And oh my God, this is the worst time of the year to be training for a marathon. And I've done that before too, because I have run Boston, and Peoria is a little farther south. So, when I think about all those things, it just overwhelms me. But it also tells me how much the boys love me. And, I think they know that I love them back just as much. So it just doesn't get any better. You could find other things maybe that are as good, but for me, that gift was like ultimate, because I'm an ex-endurance runner. So thank you, boys.
So are there any plans of continuing to do this?
That's a tough question. So yes, we are signed up for Chicago Marathon this fall, and we're currently raising funds for that. We have a good chunk already raised, and they don't. For the Boston Marathon, the entry is a bit harder to get into because they have way less people. But for Chicago, since that's through a different organization, they have quite a lot more bibs for the team. So you don't have to raise as much money. So,
Gotcha.
we should be fine there, but we're still going to raise as much money as we possibly can.
Right.
For the organization, right? Like we want everybody to get their fair share. Right. So we are signed up. We will see, how Dad's doing. It's, several months from now, and how ALS goes. So we'll see how it is at that time, and, how the family's doing and what's going on in our life. But yeah, you might see us out there in the Chicago Marathon. Come watch us. Look for a bright orange pushchair.
You gonna make Matt push it this time?
Yeah. Well, Matt, are you gonna tell him what you told me?
Yeah. So when we first told Dad that we wanted to run Boston with him last year, that was on Father's Day weekend, we were all in town because there's a race in Peoria, Illinois, which is where we grew up, called Steamboat. It's a 4-mile race, not a marathon. But we like to come back for that race and do it all together. And we see some of our old friends and running friends from high school and whatnot. And so we're coming back again to do it this year. And I'm going to be pushing Dad in the pushchair for that race. And we'll see tentatively if I can push Dad to a personal best in his 4-mile race.
Nice.
We'll see. I did a hard workout yesterday, and I'm not. It's gonna be close.
No pressure, Matt. No matter what, I think there's a good chance it'll be a personal best for me, because you got to know my son Matt and Mike. They're both very competitive and both very fast. Matt qualified for his first Boston Marathon in 2 hours and 36 minutes. And while he was in high school, he was in club track and field, and he got 5th in the nation in the half marathon, and his pace was like 5 minutes and 25 seconds a mile. So I'm sure he's going to run faster than I ever ran that 4-mile race, even pushing me, because it's a flat race. So I'm just looking forward to another good time. And this time we're going to be surrounded by people who know us. So I'm expecting it to be, really special. So thank you, Matt.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, because at that race, it's in the town where we had our longest period of time running. Our deepest running routes are in Peoria. So when we run that race, we see it's so much of saying hi to people, and then afterwards, all of the socializing. And so it'll really be a fun time. And I'm sure we'll get to tell people there who haven't gotten a chance to talk to us in person yet after the Boston Marathon. We can tell them about Boston, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So are you guys able to sign other folks up as well, or is this just something that you're doing for your dad?
So I guess we haven't really talked about, doing like a team challenge with like other people. Yeah, I think that'd be something maybe we'd be open to. We can certainly share like, how logistically we got through all this, because it was a challenge to, figure out all the rules and talk to the right people and all that kind of jazz. I think the hardest part of it is sourcing a chair, to be honest. And, a lot of things came together for us to do that. The lead times on those chairs were something like several months, like 4 or 5 months. And we needed one within like 3 or 4 weeks. So we got, we were fortunate there to get one kind of on rush order. But yeah, we can maybe make some sort of like a help document for all that kind of stuff for people and get them.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to see, 5 or 6 ALS runners in the next one,
Yeah, we're trying to inspire people to do that, right?
I'm thinking, Cory, my mind's, the wheels are turning, it's like, oh, I think you planted the seed. Maybe we could have a team ALS just for this steamboat race. And then I was thinking, well, what if we do an ice bucket challenge afterwards? And anybody can come up and, do the ice bucket and donate some money, because there's a lot of people that come to this race. This year, it's the national championships for U.S. track and field 4-mile, both the regular and the veterans, or the masters, or whatever they call them. So we expect it to be even bigger. So maybe I'll start to get organized and say, hey, let's form a team Birkel or something, and use that as a way to boost awareness, and maybe get a few more donations. Thank you for the idea.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry Matt and Mike. I didn't mean to add extra work to you guys.
No, boys, you just train. Dad'll do the rest of this stuff. It'll give me something to focus on.
An ice bucket challenge at the end of a race that's typically 80 degrees during the day will probably feel pretty good.
Yeah,
Matt, I got to talk to Adam White about this. He's the race director and a good friend. Oh, Matt, tell him what happened in the Boston Marathon regarding Adam.
Oh, yeah, we got to say hi to him during the race. So Adam White runs the running store in Peoria called RC Outfitters, formerly called Running Central, which is where that RC came from, and RC Outfitters. Yeah, we knew he was going to be down there, but just with being busy ourselves, and he's, getting ready for his own race, we didn't actually get to cross paths with him until we were on the streets of Boston. So Dad and Mike started earliest because they're in the pushchair division, and they like to get the pushchairs started first because it's safer for people to be passing the pushchairs than it is for the pushchairs to try and pass other people. So they start before everybody else, even before the elite runners. And then the elite runners start, and they have, then another 15 minutes or so. Then the first wave of runners starts, and then 20 or so minutes later, the next wave of runners starts. And so we all started ahead of Adam. And then about mile 20, it was around, I think just after we'd crossed Heartbreak Hill, he comes up running behind us, and he's just like, hey, you guys are doing awesome. And I was like, oh, I got to get out my GoPro. I get the GoPro out, and he's talking to Dad. I couldn't, you can't hear what you're saying because the crowd was so loud, which was awesome. But it was a lot of fun seeing him out there, and he ran a great race. I think it was almost sub 3.
So. It was just nice seeing somebody from our local community like that we've known forever, and he's done more to keep people engaged in running in our area than any other person. And we ran into him out of the 30,000 runners in the Boston Marathon. There he goes running by, and he turned around and came back and shook my hand, jogged along. We never stopped. It was a wonderful moment.
That's awesome. What made you choose the Boston Marathon? Anything specifically, or that was just the next one coming up?
I mean, the Boston Marathon is the best marathon in the world. I can't imagine anything to be better than that. I haven't done every marathon in the world. None of us have done every marathon in the world. But, Dad, you've done several world marathon majors, London, Chicago, and Boston. And
yeah.
You've always said Boston is the best. I think it's also the oldest competitive marathon in the world, continuously running one. So
129 now.
Yeah, there's some history to the race as well, which makes it really special. But it's the best. There's nothing like the Boston crowd.
And it's hard. It's hard to get in, right? And so, and you have to qualify. So it's mostly all fast people. And we used to be all fast people. Now the boys are just the fast ones in the family. But so the sense of achievement and accomplishment and the challenge just to get in, but it's so famous, that once we got in, I couldn't contain myself, and I started telling everybody what my boys were doing for me. So, and then it just kind of took off.
It's awesome. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but emotionally, doing this with your sons, like, what was that like actually during the race for you, Jeff?
Well, I can get pretty emotional, and I don't know if it's a side effect of ALS or just this tremendous gift they're giving me. We've always been a close family, but this brought us even closer, I think. We have a video. Matt got the GoPro out, and we had just crested Heartbreak Hill. Now, Mike kept telling me before the race, Dad, I'm going to have to walk up the hill. I can't run up the hill. But he secretly had a goal not to walk at all during the race. So I realized when he crested the hill, and I know the rest of the course after that is basically downhill, Mike was going to finish the marathon pushing me. And the chair and me weigh about 200 pounds. And it's not just Heartbreak Hill. There's other hills in the race, but the Heartbreak one is so long and sustained, and it's at a bad time. It's when you're really feeling the effects of the marathon. So Matt pulls out the GoPro, and he's like, hey, we crested Heartbreak Hill. And in the other videos, I would talk or say something, but this one I was, bawling, but I wore my big bug eye sunglasses to hide it. But, I was just so grateful and overwhelmed by the gift of love. And then what Mike had just achieved, pushing me 200 pounds. And when I look back at the videos of that, Mike's like stretched out pushing. It's not easy. He's like a blocking sled in football, shoulder to the chair kind of thing. So, yeah, it was overwhelming, Cory, but it's a wonderful kind of overwhelming. They were tears of joy, of course.
Oh, yeah. Matt, how about you? Same moment, different moment?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I was very happy to see it happen, although, only one person is allowed to push the chair. So
Gotcha.
I think for me, it was, I had put in a lot of the other work, I think, in advance. And on the day of the race, I wanted to capture it and I wanted to be there for it. And so, I saw that Dad was getting emotional and I was happy for him. I think that's what we wanted, I think if we went through that whole race and didn't have that moment that, I would have almost been kind of sad that we didn't. I wanted to have that moment. I wanted to feel those tears, and I wanted Dad to feel the love that Mikey and I have for him. And that's why we really set out to do this. And I think we accomplished that. And we're going to do it again with our little races here and there, and we'll see how long we can keep doing it. Of course, with ALS, you don't know exactly how everything's going to go in 6 months from now, but we're gonna roll with it.
Mike, how about you? Was that your favorite point?
Oh man, in the marathon, that was probably my favorite point because it means I was up the hardest part. I don't know. I think for me, we were fortunate enough to get finish line passes for my wife and for Matt's wife, so they could see us cross the finish line. Because at the Boston Marathon, since they had the bombing a decade ago, they don't let the crowd show up for like the last half mile of the race, pretty much, just to kind of be safe for the runners. And so we were fortunate enough to get finish line passes for them. And I think when we were passing them, there's a photo I think they took or some professional photographer took, and you can see all of us smiling. And Dad's got his hands up and he's got his thumbs out, and Matt's cheering. I think that photo for me, like I remember that moment, and it's awesome we have it on camera because you can see it, forever now. That moment where we're basically at the finish line, I think that was it for me. Like it really encompasses our whole journey.
That was right when we had just spotted Sasha and Kaylin.
No, I have to say, if you pick just one moment, that one is my favorite. And that photo is my favorite of the whole race because it captures the emotion and the accomplishment, But Cory, I wanted to say, I forgot to, we got interviewed afterwards by the Boston Globe. They were waiting for us to talk to us. And before that, somewhere in the last 4 miles, as Matt said, the crowd was cheering so loud he couldn't even hear what our friend was saying to me. But I became like overwhelmed by the crowd and their support. And I started trying to focus on making eye contact and personal interaction and mouthing thank you and things. And I had the thought that I wanted to share with you all because I shared it with the newspaper. I debated, but I thought, no, this is too good. I started thinking, I bet this is like when you die and you get to heaven. There's people there cheering you and welcoming you in. And I got to thinking, boy, if I was in heaven, I don't think I'd want to leave the gate because that's where the joy is. It's like standing at international arrivals and watching all these happy family reunions in the airport. Do that sometime when you're depressed and it'll pick you up. So I had, it's like heaven on earth in my faith in humanity, the whole experience. The whole experience, the love of my boys, of course, and their family and their wives and my wife. It wasn't just the boys. Everybody had a sacrifice to make this happen. But then there's the ALS community that got behind us. And then there's the other people, donors and strangers, that are pulling for us. And then the crowd. My faith in humanity has just gone through the roof. Sometimes we don't get along, but I tell you what, we're all good people at heart, I think. So, and it comes out in something like this, and it just brings you such inner joy to be a part of that. So I'm so grateful. Thank you.
If you keep it up, man, I might have to go run me a marathon.
Well, there is somebody in the ALS community. Why can't I remember her name now? But she was one of the first people I talked to about how to do all this. And she's able to use her legs. Her arms are going, and she has like a little thing she leans on. And she's, I think she did New York here this last fall. She's from Wisconsin, Matt. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. She might even be on the call. So if you are, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, you could do it, Cory. And there's people that do the recumbent bike, and other forms. So, or get somebody to push you. It's a lot easier.
That'll probably be the route I go. Running's never been my thing.
Yeah.
Jeff, what's something you wish everyone could understand about ALS?
Well, I don't need to have something that I wish other people that have ALS understand. What I would say to people that don't know much about ALS is it is unforgiving. And, I'm a tough guy. I'm not saying that to boast, but I run 10 marathons. I was a wrestler in high school. I went ranching and farming after I worked 33 years at Caterpillar, and I was the guy doing all the work. And I'm tough as nails. And early on, I just say, I'm going to fight this thing. But it's like a marathon. If you don't train proper and you're getting in the upper miles, the marathon is bigger than you. You can say, I'm tough and I'm going to power through, but you can't. The runners that have run marathons call it hitting the wall. And, ALS is a wall. And eventually, no matter how tough you are, it gets you. And it's hard and it never goes away. But I will say this, you can choose how to respond to that. Because every day you wake up and you face that reality, and you can choose, am I going to be sullen and moody and pity myself? Or I'm going to take the precious gift of another day and live it to the fullest and be happy. And that's what I choose to do. You don't get away from it, but your attitude can sure help you deal with it. And, the boys giving me this gift, they really helped me, make that transformation to, hey, let's focus on the days that we have and make the most of them, because you can get out there and do stuff. I have to have more assistance. I got one of those chairs, from the Gleason Foundation. Thank you, Steve Gleason. That chair is wonderful. It's flown, not all around the world, but it's been to the Caribbean, and it's going to Europe this summer, and been to Mexico. So it gives us freedom. So what I tell people is, and Mike kind of said it quite well in some recent news interviews, it's not the end. You can still have a good life. And that's why we're sharing our story, is we really want to encourage other people with ALS not to give up and enjoy what they have left. Because we all know what the end result's going to be eventually. And you said it, earlier, Cory, the journey's different for everybody. Some have slow and some have fast, but we all have it. And, it's going to get us in the end eventually. So that's what I tell people.
I think that's good advice. It's definitely something I try to do a lot of, but sometimes it gets a little hard when you're looking at the ALS wall.
Yeah,
I think it's a good point too, just from even from not the people living with ALS, the family, the friends, the supporters as well. I think Mikey might agree with me on this one. I think it's safe to say that this journey that we've gone through, and when we first told Dad and we started doing this, has invigorated him, and he's moving more and he's doing more, not just with the running, but just overall having the experience and getting to go out there and do stuff gives you the confidence and the realization that, yeah, you can still go and do stuff. And that's another reason why I'm very happy that we've done this. And I think for other people who know people living with ALS, other family members, brainstorm and think, it doesn't have to be running a marathon. That worked for us. I mean, that's what we were all longtime distance runners. And so this was a fun thing that we could all do together, get out there and go and do something and turn it into a really big journey. It doesn't have to be this big, but to get to go and support the person with ALS, that it pays dividends. It has a ripple effect. It gives them the confidence to go and do other things and to stay involved in the world.
Matt, Mike, what would what would be one thing you wish anyone that didn't know anything about ALS understood, kind of watching your dad go through it?
I think the number one thing that I've taken away from this is ALS is brutal on the other person like the person who has it. And it's almost impossible to really understand exactly what they're going through and how fast this can really occur, right? And I think the one thing that I would want other people to know is that you can't make slow decisions with this. You have to react very quickly. For us, an example was just, we wanted to do this Boston Marathon in 2026, not in 2025. Initially, that was our plan. But, Dad made it clear to us that it's like, no, I don't want to do it in 2026. I want to do it in 2025 because of how I'm feeling and how fast I feel myself progressing, right, with this disease. And I think that was kind of a shock for us because, you've had your dad for 60 plus years. And then suddenly it's like, oh, we don't know when he could be gone, right? Like it could take a turn any moment. And I think that's the number one thing is if you have anyone in your life, whether that be family, whether that be friends, whether that be coworkers, and you hear that they're diagnosed with the disease like ALS or like ALS, it's very fast acting. Don't waste any time with them. You need to get on board with whatever you can to help them and whatever you want to do and go and see them and spend as much time as you can with them. That's good for you and it's good for them, right? Like ultimately we want to be here for them because they're going through this, right? And it's very hard on us, but I want to be strong for Dad and I want, Dad to have as many good moments as he can for the rest of his life. And so, we're trying to spend as much time as we can with him. Obviously we all live in different cities and, we have careers as young working engineers, but, we can still call him. We can still see him on many vacations throughout the year. We can push him and give him a poke to do other fun things in his life like this. And I think, that's really what I would challenge or push other people to do who don't have the disease is like, that's the way to support them. Obviously they'll have some primary caregiver and the story for them is going to be completely different because they're going to be on a day-to-day basis. In that case, it's our stepmother, Carla. She may have a different opinion because she sees Dad every day and, she was a nurse in the ER for like 30 years. So she knows how to deal with sick patients. So we're very fortunate there that she's willing to do that for Dad. But, for someone like a little further out from that in the journey, I think that's what I would push, spend as much time with them as you can.
Jeff, we have similar taste in women. My wife's also a nurse.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Let me just add to what Mike said about, don't take too long to make decisions because, the nature of the disease, and your opportunity will be gone. Mike, just last night, I was thinking about Bob Lapke. Now, Bob Lapke was one of my best friends, and he died from ALS, I think, about 8 years ago, maybe 9. I think it was 2016-ish. And if I would have known now what it was like to be living with ALS, I would have stopped by and visited with him every day, but I didn't. And I stopped by. He was one of the quick ones, diagnosed in August and died in June, and I probably only stopped to visit him 3 times. And I was just thinking, daggone it, I wish I would have understood ALS better because he and I were really good friends. And he always was happy to see me, And so, yeah, that's what I would tell people as well. Thank you for triggering that, Mike.
Jeff, what gives you hope?
Well, my faith gives me hope. I'm a devout Christian, and for me, that's my rock, Cory, is, I'm striving for the end goal. And I tell people there's nothing like a terminal diagnosis to make you want to live like a saint, but then that becomes frustrating because you feel the pressure to want to be good, and we're human and we fail. But in my version of Christianity, I'm a Catholic. We can go to confession and tell a priest, we screwed up, and start over again. And so that's the beauty of Christianity, is there is forgiveness if you're truly, contrite and sorry from your bottom of your heart. And because of that, Cory, I have hope, and I have hope. First of all, it starts with faith. The faith, teaches me what I just said. And because of the faith, I have hope. And because of the hope, I'm not stuck in mire and like, oh my God, I'm dying and this is all there is. No, no, no. I have the opportunity to finish out my days and be an extra good person if I can. Now, I'm not a saint, but my point is it enables me to love, because I believe we're all here on earth to learn how to love each other. Because how could there be anything different in heaven? There's not going to be quarrels and fights and petty behavior, so, it's, you've heard it probably before, is faith, hope, and love, but love is the greatest. So I just want to do a lot of loving in my final days.
Matt, Mike, what brings you guys hope looking at the ALS fight your dad's going through?
Yeah, ALS, I mean, like I said before, ALS is brutal. It's a terrible disease, and we don't really know what causes it, right? There's no cure for it. There's very limited medications. Some may be available for some very specific triggers in ALS, but that's not available to everyone. And so, when Dad was just visiting me this past weekend, we watched a documentary on ALS and, promoting ALS awareness in Washington, D.C. to try to gain funding. And that was a very good documentary. And it really kind of opened my eyes to understanding what it feels like to have ALS mentally and what those patients want to do for the community for ALS. Because as a family member, we get a little bit frustrated sometimes with Dad being like, oh, I want to talk, on this podcast, or I want to go on the news. Can you come help me do that? But it's so important to do those things because, ALS isn't necessarily the most well-known disease. Cancer, Alzheimer's, et cetera. Those kinds of diseases have quite a lot of awareness. There's more patients with those. It's a more common disease, but, ALS isn't, it's not super rare, but it's not super common. And so watching this documentary kind of showed me that it's worth supporting these people and seeing how many people are willing with ALS to go out there and talk about it and push for funding and raise money and awareness really gives me hope that, like, in the future, they're going to find a cure, they're going to find treatment, and they're going to make it better for these people. And it's like, it's tough right now. And it's hard on families and people who have ALS, but the future, we're pushing for a better future. Right. And so we can't, we don't want to sit here and wallow in our sadness of what's happening to our dad and our family. We want to go out there and really push and help find a cure.
Cory, you're doing some of that yourself. Thank you, with your show here, ALS Matters. So you're part of that initiative that Mike is talking about. So thank you.
Yeah, we're trying. Thanks to the ALS Association for asking me to do it. I definitely am trying to, right? Kind of mindset I took with it is leave it better than you found it, right? So hopefully we could do something with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just to bring up what Dad said earlier as well. I think that he said that, the Boston Marathon, that experience gave him a lot more faith in humanity. And I think that also gives us hope, right? As we go out there and we did the Boston Marathon, and we're trying to fundraise, and we see people coming and supporting us, and we feel that that love and that support. And with this podcast that you're doing, Cory, and spreading the word and raising awareness about ALS, and all the stuff that you saw in your documentary, Mike, I think all of this is telling kind of the same story, but all in a slightly different tune. There's kind of an orchestra happening here, which is the world is filled with suffering of various shapes and sizes, but we continue to push forward for better life for people in the future. And all of the suffering that has happened, we're all suffering together in our own way somehow, but we're all going to make things better for people in the future. And I can see some of this happening. I mean, I saw a YouTube video recently about a man who recently got the Neuralink implant, a man who has ALS. I can't remember his name.
I saw that. I haven't watched it yet, but it definitely popped up on the feed the other day. I'm interested in that.
I would encourage you to watch it. I think it's interesting because I didn't know much about how the Neuralink system worked. And this is the early fringes, I think, of these types of brain implants that will give control and bring people who have lost their mobility back into the world and able to interact and communicate again. But I saw that and I thought, wow, this is crazy. This is like futuristic and really cool. And then I kind of connected that back to, well, we fundraised a good amount with what we did with the Boston Marathon as well, and we're contributing to that going forward. So I think I do have, when I saw that, it actually gave me a good amount of hope as well, from a technological standpoint, that, oh wow, there's other technology has gotten to the point now where there's other and new ways that we can treat ALS by supporting people with these new, back in the day we made a wheelchair, and now we're looking at what is like a super wheelchair, basically. So I think it's cool, and I'm happy that we're all part of it. We're all pushing for that better future.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are, but I have the genetic SOD1 version of ALS, and research funding is something that's near and dear to my heart, just because of that Qalsody medication that's come out. It's helped several people in my family, myself included. And I don't think we could ever say enough about how much that research funding is important, especially to rare diseases or rarer diseases like ALS.
Yeah.
So, how can others participate in this other than, actually going out and run? How are you guys raising funds? Kind of walk me through getting involved in that.
Yeah, I think it's not just about running. I think for us, it turned into, we're trying to share the story with, first it's close friends and family, but as that spreads. And I think for us, one of the things that was a relatively simple way to do that was to share our journey on social media. And we didn't really know, we're not influencers or anything. And so the videos that we've taken, and it is kind of interesting to look back at the first ones that we took and then look at the later ones that we took and see how we kind of figured out little things,
like, a little savvier.
What angle should you hold the camera at and stuff like that. And like, how long should the video be? And, how much should you talk, or should you show other things? And it was kind of fun because, we were looking at the videos and going, oh, why did that one get so many more views? Oh, I have no idea. But, and we're small fries here. But, that was fun. I think we got a lot of people commenting, and there were, other friends that I have through other hobbies, totally unrelated to running. I don't even know if they knew I was a runner, that they saw that and they said, oh, that's really cool. I didn't really know much about ALS before. Thanks for sharing your story and your journey. So whatever it is, whether it's running or some other adventure that you want to go and do together with your family, to put it out there and just try it. I mean, we like I said, we aren't influencers, and the first videos were kind of awkward, and it was like, I'm not really sure what should we say, but just do it. You gotta, like that's kind of like the thing with life, you know. Don't hold yourself back. Just go ahead and try it, and don't be scared to put it out there, and people are gonna appreciate the story that you're telling.
Yeah. It's funny if you go back and watch the first episode of the podcast, like the mic wasn't working. I had to use the camera mic, and you can barely hear me. Everyone else you can hear just fine. So being 6 episodes in, you know, I feel like
So you have your own form of this.
Oh, it's speaking in a small group, I'm fine, right? I can hold court all day, but doing stuff like this, it feels so awkward. It's not natural. It's not something I've ever done before. So
you're doing fine, Cory. Let me just add something to what Matt said. You know, not everybody probably even wants to attempt to do awareness outreach through social media. You know, that's a kind of a effort that, you know, you have to enjoy the journey because it takes some work to do it. What I also do is when I go to a restaurant, I tell the hostess, "Oh, I'm sorry, you know, I'm a little klutzy and I have ALS." And I tell them, and then they see it, and sometimes they go, "What is ALS exactly?" And so, you know, I tell them neurodegenerative disease that robs you of your motor neurons, you know, and so that's just a one-on-one, but you know, it's got to start somewhere, right? And so I do that all the time. You know, I'm not a bashful person. And so I share, you know, what ALS is in public and unsolicited. I force it on them, sort of. I mean, I don't say, let me tell you about ALS, but I usually offer it some way to explain my behavior.
right.
You know, yeah.
Little guerrilla style advocating. I like it.
There you go. So, and everybody can do that. No, I know my wife would never do that. She's the quiet type, and she gets irritated with me for me telling everybody, but that's who I am, and I see it as I like that guerrilla style.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good though, Dad. I think, you know, having the courage to own your disease and tell other people you've never even met in your life and you're probably never going to meet again that, hey, you know, I need a little bit more help. You know, please be aware of where I'm at in my life and, you know, try to be polite about it, right? But, you know, ask for some accommodation. You know, if you can get a booth, get a booth. If you can sit closer to the bathroom in case you have to get up so you don't have to walk as far, right? Like, and explaining why that is, you know, you're doing two things, right? Like you're helping yourself and then you're also bringing awareness to the disease. And I think it's, you know, for some people, I can imagine that being really tough, you know, especially if you're not the most outspoken person already. But, you know, one thing I would tell people, you know, from this podcast is like, it's okay to admit and tell other people that you have ALS and that it's really hard for you, because other people are absolutely willing to help you. You know, most of the time, if you're trying to stay by yourself, they'll leave you alone because that's what they see from your body language. And they, you know, you're here to have a meal with your family, and most people just want to interact with their family. But, you know, it's okay to ask for help. That is really important, I think. Don't feel like you have to do it on your own, right? Like, and the community, everybody around you understands that, right?
Yeah, I think with a disease like ALS too, that's particularly important to realize and to accept, which is that, you know, 5 years ago, Dad was running 20-mile weeks.
Matt, we ran across the Grand Canyon.
Right. Well, a little more than 5 years ago, I think. But yeah, not actually that long ago. And so when you get a disease like this, I think and you know, I'm proud of Dad for being very willing to ask for help. Although I think, Dad, you might even say that you've had moments where you were resistant to asking for help, and, you know, and you've had some moments where it's really hit you like, no, like this is hard. I do need help. And to do that, because it's hard when you go, when it happens so suddenly, right? You were fine. So you want to maintain your independence and all of that, but no, like, I'm proud of you, Dad, and thankful that you do ask for the help and that you communicate how it feels to us, so that we know, so that we can support you, and to the others, the server at the restaurant, like whoever it may be.
Yeah. Well, I've learned, Matt, that, especially as the diseases progress, I can be a stubborn, tough guy and say, no, I don't want help. But then before the day's over, I'm so worn out, I won't engage. And so I've learned that, let people help you when it doesn't matter, because it saves you energy, and then you're more a part of your whatever experience you're having. You're not sitting there thinking about, oh, I can't wait to get home and get in my chair. You're living the moment. So I'm starting to figure that out, because I like sharing memories with you guys, not thinking about nap time.
Yeah. So Cory, to go back to your question, I think you were we kind of diverged a bit. I think.
No worries, man.
You were asking, I think, about other ways people can get involved, and I think it starts in your local community and just kind of bringing awareness however you can. Matt suggests social media, but the ALS Association, we've been working with Helen as kind of a coordinator for some of our newscasts and other such marketing things. And she just suggested we go on the website and look for like local events in your area that are hosted by like the ALS Association. And so I think, being involved in those, we haven't done much of that yet, but there's lots of walks, there's lots of runs, there's things like Ice Bucket Challenge, there's things everywhere that you can go and kind of just start to get involved. And you can put your toes in the water and see how it feels and pick which ones of those events kind of are good for you. But I think the association has such a wide variety of opportunities for people, from things like painting to pottery to going to see movies to plays to whatever, that running, like everything. If you're into something, the association has a way to help you through that journey. And I think, that's awesome. And getting involved with that, and if you're not a person with ALS and you have a family member who likes those things, getting involved with those activities to help other people who have ALS also enjoy the things that your loved one has enjoyed for so long. I think those are some really fantastic ways to go and really help. We love to run. So, we're involved with all the running stuff. We're really in tune with all of that, going to the walks and all that kind of stuff. But, some of the other things that exist are awesome for people too.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of so many different organizations that do all kinds of different things. I came across a page the other day. It was Racing for ALS, and it's a bunch of folks who just like racing cars, and they use that to raise awareness. Yeah, but all kinds of things.
You can see the wall behind me. It's like I was sitting there while you guys were talking, reflecting two totally different aspects of my past life. Over here is the bib numbers from some of my favorite races, and over here are pictures of when I used to race go-karts and stuff. So I didn't know there was a racing community for ALS. I'm gonna have to check.
I'll attach them to the email that we've all got going there, so you can check them out.
Okay,
They've got some really cool events going on.
Bye.
I think you can tell that Dad likes to go fast, whether that be running or in a car.
Right? Hey, look, I get it, man.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to Matt pushing me at a sub 6 minute pace.
24 minutes, Matt. You got to break 24 minutes to give Dad a personal record time at Steamboat.
We'll see. It is definitely an achievable goal, but it will require me to train pretty efficiently in the next month.
You guys are insane.
Now, Matt, I do not want you to hurt yourself.
Well, I'm not too worried. The 4 mile is much less of an injury risk, I think, than the marathon.
Yeah, but I was just thinking. I was thinking. You do your best thinking at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and Cory's laughing because I think he does too. Anyway. I was thinking, oh my God, Matt might blow his hamstring out on the start, when they say go, and you try to accelerate 200 pounds, so I have to remember to tell them to take it easy and just get it up to speed.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. Yeah. I don't want to get hurt, but I appreciate that, or I have fun with the challenge of seeing what I can do with it. So
Yeah, just start slow, finish fast, right? Just accelerate through the whole 4 miles. You'll be fine.
yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
And it's a nice flat course. So
They call that
wouldn't have-
negative splits.
yeah,
Negative split.
slowly build momentum.
There you go. Oh, Jeff, Matt, Mike, I want to thank you guys for joining today. I think we put out some good information. I can't wait to watch some of the videos you guys did of the marathon. That sounds awesome. Show my wife. I'm sure she's going to love them. For everyone else watching, as always, leave your questions and stuff in the comments. We're compiling a list of those and have some plans for that later on. As always, thank you for watching ALS Matters, and have a good one.